There are moments when the math looks perfect and you make a decision that changes everything. For Tyler Roth, that moment came on a Monday morning in April 2022. Sitting across a desk from a Massey Ferguson sales rep named Craig, looking at fuel consumption spreadsheets that promised to save him $38,000 a year. Tyler was 36 years old. He'd been farming 2,800 acres of corn and soybeans in southwest Iowa since 2014. He didn't own all that ground. He owned 640 acres outright, inherited from his grandfather. The rest he rented aggressively from 7 different landowners scattered across 3 counties. Tyler's operation ran on leverage, equipment loans, operating lines of credit, annual rent payments that came due every March whether the crops made money or not. It was a high-wire act, but it worked. Most years. 2022 was not most years. Diesel fuel hit $5.60 a gallon in March. Fertilizer costs had doubled since 2020. Seed prices were up 40%. Tyler's projected input costs for the year were $680,000. That was $240,000 higher than 2019. The math was brutal. Even with strong commodity prices, Tyler's margins were getting crushed. Every dollar he spent on inputs was a dollar that didn't go toward equipment payments, land rent, or living expenses. Tyler was sitting in his office on a Sunday night in March, staring at his fuel budget, when he realized diesel alone was going to cost him $94,000 for the year. He pulled up his fuel records from 2019. Back then, diesel had cost him $51,000 for the entire year. Tyler was paying $43,000 more for fuel, just fuel. And there was nothing he could do about it, or was there? Tyler had seen the Massey Ferguson ads, the ones claiming their 8S series tractors with Dyna VT transmission burned 25 to 30% less fuel than comparable tractors. He'd always assumed it was marketing noise. But $43,000 in extra fuel costs made him willing to listen to anything. Tyler called a Massey Ferguson dealership in Council Bluffs the next morning. He got connected to a sales rep named Craig. "Craig, I'm looking at my fuel costs and they're killing me. I keep seeing ads about your tractors being more fuel efficient. Is that real, or is that just marketing?" Craig didn't hesitate. It's real. The Dyna VT continuously variable transmission keeps the engine in its optimal efficiency range under load. We're seeing 25 to 30% fuel savings compared to standard power shift transmissions in real-world conditions. Tyler felt his pulse quicken. "I'm running 3 John Deere 8R tractors right now. If I switch to Massey Ferguson, what kind of fuel savings am I actually looking at?" Craig asked some questions. What models? What kind of work? How many hours per year? Tyler gave him the details. 3 Deere 8370R tractors, roughly 1,200 hours per year combined. Heavy tillage, planting, spraying, grain cart duty. Craig ran some numbers. "Based on what you're telling me, if you switched to 3 Massey Ferguson 8S tractors, you'd probably save around 2,200 gallons of diesel per year. Maybe more." Tyler did the math in his head. At $5.60 a gallon, that was $12,320 per year per tractor. Times 3 tractors, that was $36,960 annually. Almost $37,000. Tyler felt something shift in his chest. That's real money. It is. And with fuel prices where they are right now, that savings pays for a significant portion of your equipment cost. Tyler was quiet for a moment. "What would it cost me to make that switch?" Craig pulled up pricing. "Your 3 8Rs are probably worth about $600,000 total on trade-in. 3 new Massey Ferguson 8S tractors configured like your Deeres would run about $138 million. So, you're looking at $780,000 in net new financing." Tyler's stomach tightened. That was a lot of debt. But Craig wasn't done. Finance that over 7 years, and you're looking at about $112,000 per year in payments. But you're saving $37,000 per year in fuel. So your net annual cost is really only $75,000, and you've got brand new equipment with full warranty coverage for the next 5 years. Tyler thought about his current situation. He was already making payments on the Deere tractors. Those payments were about $68,000 per year, but the tractors were 6 years old, out of warranty, and costing him $94,000 a year in fuel. If he switched to Massey Ferguson, his equipment payments would go up by $7,000 per year. but his fuel costs would drop by $37,000. Net savings, $30,000 per year. Tyler looked at those numbers and felt the pull. This could work. "Can I come see the tractors?" Tyler asked. "Absolutely. When works for you? I'll be there tomorrow." Tyler drove to Council Bluffs the next day. Craig met him in the lot and walked him through a Massey Ferguson 8S 265, bright red, 265 horsepower. The cab was clean and modern. The controls felt intuitive. Craig showed Tyler the fuel consumption monitoring system, real-time data, gallon-per-hour readouts, historical tracking. "This is how you verify the savings. You'll be able to see exactly how much fuel you're burning compared to your old Deers." Tyler climbed into the cab and sat there for a moment. He thought about $37,000 a year. He thought about fuel prices that might stay high for years. He thought about the equipment payments he was already making on aging tractors that were burning fuel like it was 2019. The math worked. The logic worked. Tyler looked at Craig. "If I do this, how fast can you make it happen? We can have you in New Iron by early May, right before planting." Tyler extended his hand. "Let's do it." They shook. Tyler drove home feeling something he hadn't felt in months, like he'd just outmaneuvered the market. Tyler didn't tell many people what he was doing. He mentioned it to his wife, Lisa, that night. "You're trading all 3 tractors?" "Yeah, that's a lot of debt, Tyler, I know, but the fuel savings are real. I ran the numbers 6 different ways. We saved $37,000 a year. That's more than the increase in equipment payments." Lisa looked at him across the kitchen table. "What if fuel prices drop?" Tyler paused. "Then we're still saving money, just not as much. But even if diesel drops to $4 a gallon, we're still saving $24,000 a year." Lisa nodded slowly. "Okay, if you're confident, I am." The paperwork went fast. Tyler's accountant, a guy named Ron, reviewed the financing terms and didn't see any red flags. "You're leveraging up, but the fuel savings justify it. As long as diesel stays above $4 a gallon, you're coming out ahead." Tyler signed the contracts in late April. The 3 Massey Ferguson 8S tractors were delivered in early May. 2 8S 265 models and 1 8S 205, all configured with DynaVT transmissions, precision guidance systems, and full manufacturer warranties. Total package, $1.38 million financed over 7 years at 5.2% interest. Annual payment, $112,400. Tyler's Deere tractors went back to the dealer on trade. His old equipment debt was paid off. The new Massey Ferguson debt replaced it. Tyler posted a photo on Facebook, 3 red tractors lined up in front of his shop. The caption read, "New Iron, ready to put in some work." The comments were mostly positive. A few neighbors asked why he went red. Tyler replied, "Fuel economy. The numbers don't lie." One guy wrote, "Hope those fuel savings are real." Tyler didn't respond to that one, because he was about to find out. Planting season started in mid-May. Tyler ran the Massey Ferguson tractors hard. 2 of them pulled planters. The third ran a grain cart and did pre-plant tillage. And from day one, the fuel consumption numbers were exactly what Craig had promised. Tyler's old Deere A370Rs had burned an average of 7.8 gallons per hour during heavy field work. The Massey Ferguson 8S 265 tractors were burning 5.6 gallons per hour doing the same work. That was a 28% reduction. Tyler kept detailed records. He logged every hour, every gallon, every field operation. By the end of May, the fuel savings were undeniable. Tyler had burned 340 fewer gallons of diesel than he would have with his old Deers. At $5.16 per gallon, that was $1,904 saved in 1 month. Tyler ran the annual projection. If the savings held for the full year, he'd save $22,848 per year per tractor. Times 3 tractors, that was $68,044 annually. Tyler sat in his office staring at those numbers. He'd projected $37,000 in savings. He was on track for $68,000. The Massey Ferguson tractors weren't just meeting expectations, they were crushing them. Tyler called Craig. "These tractors are unbelievable. I'm saving even more fuel than you projected." Craig laughed. "I told you. The DynaVT is legit." Tyler hung up feeling vindicated. He'd made the right call. The fuel savings were real. The debt was justified. Everything was working. Summer 2022 was hot and dry. Tyler ran the Massey Ferguson tractors through cultivation, spraying, and harvest prep work. The fuel consumption stayed consistent. 5.4 to 5.8 gallons per hour depending on the load. By the end of August, Tyler had saved $11,200 in fuel costs compared to what he would have spent running his old Deeres. The tractors were performing flawlessly. No breakdowns, no issues. Tyler's cash flow was better than it had been in 2 years. He paid his land rent on time. He made his equipment payments without stress. He even took Lisa out to dinner in Des Moines to celebrate. "You were right about those tractors," Lisa said. Tyler smiled. Sometimes the math just works. Fall harvest came in late September. Tyler ran 2 of the Massey Ferguson tractors on grain cart duty. The fuel savings continued. By the end of October, Tyler had saved $18,400 in fuel costs for the year. He was on track to save over $20,000 annually. Not quite the $37,000 he'd originally projected, but still significant. Tyler felt good. The decision was paying off. Then November came, and everything changed. Diesel prices started dropping in early November. Not dramatically, just a slow decline. $5.60 in October, $5.20 in November, $4.80 in December. Tyler noticed, but he wasn't worried. Even at $4.80 a gallon, the fuel savings were still substantial. But in January 2023, the bottom fell out. Diesel dropped to $4.10 a gallon, then $3.80. By February, it was $3.40. Tyler sat in his office staring at fuel price charts and felt his chest tighten. At $5.60 a gallon, his Massey Ferguson tractors saved him $37,000 annually. At $3.40 a gallon, they saved him $22,400 annually. That was still savings, but it was $14,600 less than he'd projected when he made the purchase decision. Tyler pulled up his loan amortization schedule. His annual equipment payment was $112,400. His old Deere payments had been $68,000. The difference was $44,400 per year. At $5.60 diesel, the fuel savings of $37,000 meant his net annual cost increase was only $7,400. At $3.40 diesel, the fuel savings of $22,400 meant his net annual cost increase was $22,000. Tyler felt his hands go cold. He'd made a financial decision based on $5.60 diesel, and diesel was now $3.40. The savings were still there, but they weren't enough to justify the debt anymore. Tyler called Ron, his accountant. "Ron, we've got a problem." "What's wrong?" "Diesel prices dropped. My fuel savings just got cut in half." Ron was quiet for a moment. "What are your current numbers?" Tyler walked him through it. The equipment payment, the fuel savings at current prices, the gap. Ron ran some calculations. "Tyler, you're still cash flow positive. The savings are covering part of the payment. You're just not getting the windfall you expected." "I know, but my operating budget was built around higher savings. If diesel stays low, I'm going to be squeezed." "How tight?" "Tight enough that I might have trouble making my spring rent payments if we have a bad crop year." Ron sighed. "Have you talked to your bank?" "Not yet." "You should, before they notice on their own." Tyler hung up and sat in his office staring at the wall. He'd made a bet that fuel prices would stay high, and that bet had been wrong. Tyler didn't call his bank right away. He told himself he'd wait and see if diesel prices recovered. They didn't. By March 2023, diesel was stable around $3.50 a gallon. The fuel savings from the Massey Ferguson tractors were real, but they were $15,000 per year less than Tyler had projected when he financed the purchase. Spring planning came. Tyler's cash flow was tighter than usual. He made his equipment payment. He made his rent payments, but barely. Then in early May, Tyler's bank called. The loan officer's name was Dennis. He'd worked with Tyler for 8 years. He was calling to schedule Tyler's annual operating line of credit review. "Tyler, we need to go over your financials for the year. Can you come in next week?" Tyler felt his stomach drop. "Sure. When works for you? Thursday at 2 p.m.? I'll be there." Tyler spent the next 3 days preparing. He pulled together his cash flow statements, his profit and loss reports, his balance sheet. The numbers weren't bad, but they weren't great either. Tyler's debt-to-asset ratio had increased from 0.42 to 0.51 because of the new equipment loan. His cash reserves were lower than they'd been in 2021, nothing catastrophic, but not the strong financial position Tyler had been in a year ago. Thursday came. Tyler drove to the bank in Red Oak and met Dennis in a small conference room. Dennis pulled up Tyler's file on his laptop. Tyler, thanks for coming in. Let's walk through your operating line usage and your overall financial position. They spent 20 minutes going through the numbers. Dennis asked questions. Tyler answered them. Finally, Dennis sat back in his chair. Tyler, I'm seeing some things that concern me. Like what? Your equipment debt increased by $780,000 last year. Your operating expenses are up, and your cash reserves are down about 30% from where they were in 2022. Tyler felt defensive. I refinanced my tractors. The fuel savings justify the debt. Dennis nodded. I see the fuel savings in your expense reports, but they're not as high as you projected, are they? Tyler hesitated. Fuel prices dropped, so the savings dropped too, but I'm still saving money. How much? About $22,000 a year. Dennis typed something. And your annual payment on the new tractors is what? $112,400. Dennis looked at him. So you're paying $44,000 more per year in equipment costs and saving $22,000 in fuel. That's a net increase of $22,000 annually in fixed costs. Tyler felt his face flush. That's a simplified way to look at it. I've got new equipment, full warranty, lower maintenance costs. Dennis held up a hand. I'm not saying you made a bad decision, Tyler. I'm saying your debt service coverage ratio has dropped, and that affects your operating line of credit. What does that mean? It means I'm reducing your operating line from $320,000 to $280,000. Tyler felt his chest tighten. Dennis, I need that credit line. I've got rent payments coming due. I've got spring inputs to buy, I understand. But your financials don't support a $320,000 line anymore. Not with your current debt load. Tyler wanted to argue, but he knew Dennis was right. He'd leveraged up based on market conditions that no longer existed, and now his bank was pulling back. Can I appeal this? Dennis shook his head. This is already approved by the credit committee. The new limit takes effect June 1st. Tyler drove home in silence. He didn't call Lisa. He didn't call Ron. He just drove. When he got home, he sat in his truck in the driveway for 15 minutes staring at the 3 red tractors parked near his shop. They were beautiful machines. They ran perfectly. They saved him fuel every single day. But they'd been financed based on diesel at $5.60 a gallon, and diesel was $3.50. The math that had looked perfect in April 2022 didn't work anymore. Summer 2023 was tight. Tyler managed his cash flow carefully. He delayed some maintenance. He stretched some payments. He made it work, but barely. His $280,000 operating line of credit was maxed out by July. Tyler had to dip into personal savings to cover a fertilizer bill. Lisa noticed. Are we okay? She asked one night. We're fine. Just a cash flow crunch. Is it the tractors? Tyler didn't answer right away. Partly. I made the decision based on fuel prices that didn't last. Can we sell them? Tyler had thought about that. We'd lose money. Used Massey Ferguson tractors don't hold value like Deere. We'd probably take a $60,000 loss if we sold them now. Lisa was quiet. So we're stuck. Yeah, we're stuck. Fall 2023 brought a decent harvest. Tyler cut 198 bushels per acre on corn. Grain prices were okay, not great, but okay. Tyler's gross revenue for the year was $1.14 million. After expenses, his net profit was $87,000. That was enough to cover his equipment payments and his land rent. But it didn't leave much cushion. Tyler sat in his office in November running projections for 2024. If diesel stayed around $3.50 and grain prices stayed flat, he'd be looking at another tight year. He called Ron. Ron, I need advice. I'm squeezed. The tractor payments are eating into my margins, and I don't have a good way out. Ron was blunt. You've got 3 options, Tyler. 1, increase revenue by farming more acres. 2, decrease expenses somewhere else. 3, refinance the tractors over a longer term to reduce the annual payment. Tyler thought about it. I can't get more ground. Every landlord in the area is locked in. I've already cut expenses as much as I can. So that leaves refinancing. Talk to your bank. See if they'll extend the term to 10 years instead of 7. Tyler called Dennis the next day. Dennis was sympathetic but firm. Tyler, I can't extend the term. You're already at our debt limit for your operation size. If I extend the term, your total debt goes up and your coverage ratio gets worse. So what do? You make it work, or you sell the tractors and take the loss. Tyler hung up. He walked out to his shop and stood in front of the three Massey Ferguson tractors. They'd been the right decision in April 2022. The math had been perfect. The fuel savings had been real. But the math had been based on market conditions that lasted 6 months. And now Tyler was locked into 7 years of debt for a decision that only made sense when diesel was expensive. Winter 2024 was long and cold. Tyler spent a lot of time running scenarios, different grain prices, different fuel prices, different yield assumptions. In every scenario, he was tight, not broke, but tight. The Massey Ferguson tractors weren't a disaster. They were just a weight he couldn't shake. Spring 2024 came. Diesel prices crept back up slightly, $3.80 a gallon. The fuel savings improved a little. Tyler's annual savings were now around $25,000. Still not enough to justify the debt, but better than $22,000. Tyler planted. He worked his ground. He did everything right. And in June, his bank called again. Dennis wanted another review. Tyler went in. They went through the numbers. This time, Dennis didn't reduce his credit line, but he didn't increase it either. Tyler, you're stable. You're making your payments, but you don't have any margin for error. If you have a bad crop year or grain prices drop, you're going to be in trouble. Tyler nodded. I know, I'm not trying to scare you. I'm just being honest. You're leveraged. And that leverage is based on assumptions that didn't hold. Tyler drove home thinking about that word. Assumptions. He'd assumed fuel prices would stay high. He'd assumed the savings would justify the debt. He'd assumed he could outmaneuver the market by switching equipment. He'd been wrong. Not completely wrong. The tractors saved him fuel. The savings were real. But he'd made a fixed 7-year financial commitment based on temporary market conditions. And when those conditions changed, he was stuck. Fall 2024. Tyler harvested another decent crop, 202 bushels per acre on corn. Grain prices were slightly better than 2023. His net profit for the year was $94,000, enough to cover everything, enough to breathe a little easier. But Tyler knew the truth. He was one bad year away from trouble, one drought, one price collapse, one major equipment failure. The Massey Ferguson tractors had seemed like a smart play, and in some ways they were. They saved him fuel, they ran well, they did the job. But they'd been financed based on a market that didn't last. And now Tyler was paying for that bet, every month, for 3 more years, spring 2025. Tyler Roth still farms 2,800 acres in southwest Iowa. He still runs 3 Massey Ferguson 8S tractors. They have about 2,400 hours on them now. They run great. Diesel is currently $4.10 a gallon. Tyler's annual fuel savings compared to his old Deere tractors are around $28,000. His annual equipment payment is still $112,400. His net annual cost increase over his old situation is $16,400 per year. That's manageable, but it's not what he signed up for. Tyler thought he was making a smart financial decision in April 2022, and based on the information available at the time, he was. But he made a mistake. He locked himself into long-term debt based on short-term market conditions. When fuel was $5.60 a gallon, the Massey Ferguson tractors were a brilliant move. When fuel dropped to $3.40, they became an anchor. Tyler didn't lose his farm. He didn't go bankrupt. He's still operating, still making it work. But he learned something expensive. You can't finance permanent decisions based on temporary conditions. Fuel prices fluctuate, commodity prices fluctuate, input costs fluctuate, but equipment debt doesn't fluctuate. It sits there, every month, for 7 years. Tyler's Massey Ferguson tractors still save him fuel, every single day. The Dyna VT transmission still works exactly as promised, but the financial justification for buying them evaporated when diesel prices normalized. And Tyler still has 3 more years of payments. 3 more years of carrying debt that made sense in one market and doesn't make sense in another. The tractors weren't the problem. The timing was the problem. Tyler bought the right equipment at the wrong moment. And in agriculture, timing is everything. The Massey Ferguson 8S tractors still run. The fields still get worked. The crops still get planted. But every time Tyler makes that $112,400 annual payment, he thinks about April 2022, when diesel was $5.60, when the math was perfect, when the decision seemed obvious. and he wonders what would have happened if he just waited 6 months.